Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of this movie podcast, The Search for the Next The Room, where we will be taking it upon ourselves to watch some of the worst, weirdest, most obscure, and occasionally genius movies. Should have muted my microphone, sorry, so that was rather unprofessional. Where we will be searching some of the worst, weirdest, most obscure, and occasionally genius movies, searching for another accidental masterpiece in the vein of the unwittingly brilliant The Room by Tommy Wiseau. Tonight I am joined by Chris of Twoside Review and Andy of Being Andy. Good evening, gentlemen. How do I find you both this evening?
Andy of Being Andy. I do have a YouTube channel. You know.
Well, Andy of internet...
of lawn fame.
Of lawn fame, yes. So, are you both well?
I'm good. I'm tired, but I'm ready to go. I'm always down to talk about movies. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Pleasure. Right. So tonight's show, we're going to be taking a look at the movie Cockneys versus Zombies, a British film starring Rasmus Hardiker of Your Highness, about a zombie plague spreading across London that also involves a bank robbery gone sour and two brothers trying to save their granddad's retirement home from demolition. Couple of things before we get into it. Everyone in the chat there, please be aware there will be spoilers for the movie. If you do intend to watch it, you might not want to listen to this in its entirety. Secondly, we won't be taking any questions from the chat until we'll have a little section at the end. If anyone has any points they'd like to bring up or anything they would like to ask us at the end of the stream, then we will be addressing the audience. So, guys, without going into too deep a detail, what were your first impressions of Cockneys versus Zombies?
Chris?
Andy, do you want to go first?
You're the film buff, you go.
Okay, first impressions. I'll start with the trailer. I was impressed by the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit. Okay, so going into the film, where my expectations were actually kind of high, believe it or not, even though we were searching for a bad film. As soon as it started, I realized, crap, really quickly that this film has pacing issues for me. So my first impressions of this film were kind of all over the place. If I'm being fair, I felt like the jokes fell short. They kind of got straight to the zombie point, but they didn't really explain anything about the zombies. And for me, in like the first 25 minutes, and I clocked it, were very confusing and a little not confusing in a way I couldn't follow the plot. Trust me, I could follow the plot. I just didn't understand what kind of film it wanted to be. But I will tell you, with my expectations being high in the beginning of this film, I really like the title sequence in the beginning of the film. It's really cool. I haven't seen a film do something like that, so I really thought this was going to be better than it was. So my original thoughts of the film in the beginning were kind of sour.
Fell short of your expectations.
Yeah, it totally did.
What about you, Andy?
Well, I didn't watch the trailer because I don't see the point, because it's just a trailer, but I understand why you might want to do. But I thought, I started watching it, I was like, you know what? I think I'm actually going to enjoy this, because straight away from the first scene, it tells you to not take this film seriously. And what Chris is saying, I'm not sure me and Chris are looking at it the same way, because he's saying it had pacing issues and all that, which of course, you know, it's not going to win an Oscar for Best Picture, there's no doubt about that, but it's just, it was done in a way of a fun kind of, you know, don't take it too seriously, sort of slapstick zombie movie. And initially, I found it a lot of fun, and some of the jokes I thought were quite funny. I didn't have the same issues that Chris had. I do have criticisms of it, but I thought it was a good laugh. It depends what you're going into looking at it for. It's not your typical comedy, I thought.
No,
That's my view.
For me, I was a bit disappointed with a fart joke within the first 5 minutes. I sort of set the tone for the comedy, but I found it entertaining. It's not, you know, as you said, it's not going to win any Oscars. It's not. I thought it started off quite well, but it seemed to get continually weaker as it went on.
Yeah,
And
that's exactly what I thought.
Yeah, that's kind of, I was
I
kind of
started to
trying
lose
get that point.
interest at the end of the
25
movie.
minutes in is when I lost interest in it. And not to take away from yes, I found the jokes funny, but I think it's because my criticisms come from me being a big film buff, and I kept thinking about other films. Like, I kept thinking and putting myself into the filmmaker's shoes instead of taking upon myself just to enjoy it. I tried, but it got really boring for me. And so it's really bothered me because I'm like, 1 minute it feels like we're watching a Guy Ritchie movie, the next minute it feels like we're watching a zombie film. So I think they were just trying super hard to be funny and witty, and for me personally, some of the jokes just kind of fell flat.
Yeah, well, there was only, admittedly, there was one scene that made me laugh out loud. There was one bit that made me laugh out loud, and that was again within the first, I think, 25 minutes, half an hour of the film. Other than that bit, the only sort of redeeming feature or redeeming thing in it for me, well, were the performances of sorry, I should have had his name ready. Bear with me one moment. Mental Mickey's character, he's the ex-Grime star Bashi. I can't remember his acting name though, and was also, if you will remember, was very briefly in the episode of Black Mirror 20 Million Merits as the Judge Wraith, the owner of the channel that the girl gets sent to work for. And I actually thought Mental Mickey was the only character that actually had sort of any depth to them, or maybe depth is the wrong word, but was quite interesting as a character. Sorry?
You thought he was the only interesting character?
Yeah, I thought I think he's a very good actor. Him and Richard Bryars were the only two that sort of made it interesting. And Richard Bryars...
I see what you're saying. I know what you're saying. They're the only two, those two characters stand out just because they were so... I think the actors were giving a different performance than everybody else because their characters were written in such a different way. They're just different, unique characters.
Yeah, well,
they stand out. They stand out. Everyone else is kind of vanilla, or we've seen those kind of characters before. But you're right. This guy, and I'll be honest with you. As soon as we found out he had a metal plate in his head, I'm thinking, oh crap! When he becomes a zombie, I'm not gonna be able to kill him. And I saw that coming a mile away. By the way.
Well, the thing I pegged it even before the sort of zombies had taken over the East End of London. That I was like, well, black male character, he's going to be one of the first to die, and of course he was. Which was a bit disappointing because I thought he could have been a more interesting character. They were all rather two-dimensional, the characters in it, and there was no real. Although they're under a zombie attack, I didn't ever feel kind of tension or peril. Even in the action scenes, it's just like shoot this zombie. No one ever really. And of course, with a film like this, it's impossible not to draw comparisons with Shaun of the Dead. And this is a very, very, very poor man's Shaun of the Dead.
That's exactly right. Good. I was trying to think of the movie Shaun of the Dead. Oh man, yes.
The location, the zombies. It's almost exactly the same. And I don't know if you guys spotted it in the opening sequence. There's a zombie cartoon character that looked a lot like Simon Pegg. I didn't know if that was a nod to Shaun of the Dead.
It could have been, yeah.
But it certainly was nowhere in the same league. The jokes, with the exception of the baby punt,
that was funny.
That was the bit that had me laughing out loud.
I thought that was kind of funny too.
Yeah, just for anybody that doesn't know, because obviously we're talking about things people have not got a clue about. There's a bit where a baby turns into a zombie, and you're thinking, oh my god, and you're kind of shocked, and you're thinking, can they actually do that? And then he just rugby football kicks. Football kicks the baby against the wall. It's quite comical.
Yes, but and then since that, it just went downhill. There was.
Yeah, I started playing on my guitar at the same time as I was watching it, about 40 minutes into it. And I was, because the plot ran thin, I didn't know what was going on, the jokes weren't happening, but the first 40 minutes I kind of enjoyed.
it was entertaining. If you go into it with absolutely no expectations, you probably come out thinking at least it's not a waste of an hour and a half of my life. But
I mean, it's not. Yeah.
It's not the worst movie I've ever seen, and it's too well produced.
No, well, that's a shame because that's what we're looking for.
Well, yeah, but we're looking for like the worst movie that is accidentally. I mean, the reason The Room was so great is because it was accidentally a comedic masterpiece. If Tommy Wiseau had intended it to be that, it would have never been as funny as it is. And this, of course, was my choice for the first one of the movies we talked about here. But we're going to go through a lot of different movies during this series, but we had to start somewhere, so why not with this? But it's too well produced to really hold any comparisons to The Room. When we talk about our ratings at the end, towards the end of this podcast, we will discuss any similarities it may have had towards The Room. But to get back on topic of Cockneys versus Zombies, as well, I felt Rasmus Hardiker, like the main guy, the one with the floppy hair. I've seen him in a lot of things. He was in a brilliant series with Jack Dee called Lead Balloon. He was in Your Highness. He's a very promising young actor, but he couldn't hold this movie on his own. Well, I think, like I said, there's only two actors that were really keeping things together. The rest of them, it all seemed a rather subpar performance. And while Michelle Ryan is always very pleasant to look at, her character was incredibly one-dimensional and cliched. This hard woman that can hotwire cars and knows how to fire a gun. That was something else that.
That's what it's supposed to be, though, isn't it? Like, let's not say that. Oh, she needed to have depth and a backstory. We're talking about a fucking movie called Cockney versus Zombie.
Not a backstory.
Don't start slagging the film off because the characters have not got depth and a backstory. Do you want like a prequel to Zombies and Cockneys?
Well, no, but I didn't.
Explaining a backstory.
Not a backstory, but I didn't feel anything for the characters. I wasn't really rooting for them. Even if the main characters had died, I don't think I would have been upset or anything. There was no, and it was all a bit like the scene with the bus, and I don't know why they suddenly had a vintage bus rather than a regular London bus, and why they used the grandstand theme tune for that scene.
I was trying to wondering that. I thought I'd missed something. There was a bit in the movie, for anybody who's listening, right, where this bus turns up, this sort of English old red bus that they all jump on, and the music to Grandstand, which is an old English sports show, starts playing, and I'm thinking, I've obviously missed something, or I'm stupid.
Well, I think it might have been in relation to because the scene prior to that is these zombie football hooligans. It's like West Ham, and I believe the other team is Millwall. I didn't recognise their shirts, but one team is supposedly West Ham, and they're still fighting each other even when they're zombies, which is, I guess, meant to be funny. But for me, that was probably the most dull scene in the whole movie, and it was just unnecessary filler. The old folks' home as well, I kind of had an issue with.
There's too many side plots to this stupid movie too. Like, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No.
Like, we're kind of getting on that same. Like, if it's gonna be what Andy wanted it to be, like just mindless entertainment, just fun. Like if Shaun of the Dead clone, I think these storytellers or filmmakers or whatever, they got down too many side paths when it should have just been clear cut. Maybe the bank robbery for trying to save something, but it's just too many side plots. For me, it's just you're not going anywhere, and then it's too many side plots. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Chris, because I think the filmmakers, what they tried to do, this is me sounding like you now, but they tried to have this old folks thing as an emotional sort of hitch. As an emotional catch, to have you sort of, it's a reason that they did it, so it makes you a bit sentimental, the human element. Right. But it didn't really work, did it?
No.
Just to let everybody know, the whole subplot or plot is they tried to rob a bank to save their granddad's care home. So that's what the film started out as. So that was like the emotional catch, but it didn't kind of work.
No, it's almost exact plot of Shaun of the Dead, except they're going for their granddad rather than for their girlfriend and mum. It's almost the exact same plot. We've got to get across London past these zombies to save people. And while I can't remember his name, but the guy that was Bricktop in Snatch is always fun to watch. I mean, again, he was another character that I just didn't really have much time for. The action scenes themselves, like the guns and the shooting, they weren't as exciting or uplifting as they should be. And this sort of, once you get past maybe the halfway point in the movie, the jokes are really thin and few and far between, and the action scenes just weren't doing it for me. So it's like it's failing as both a comedy and an action movie, in my opinion. I did, to be fair, and this is probably maybe more something you would understand, Chris, but I liked some of the sweeping shots of London. That was quite nice. But
let's get into some positives. Like, I don't think it was shot bad necessarily. I think the special effects were. In the beginning, I was kind of hopeful. That's a practical effect. The zombie, whatever, lady coming and attacking those two construction workers.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, cool. They might mix practical in with some CGI. And I'm gonna tell you guys right now. Go back and watch the film. Each one of those muzzle flashes was computer generated.
Like, you can tell. The
reason why those action scenes, Adam, lack punch is because there is no punch.
Right.
That's where it wasn't shot. That's where the cinematography kind of drags, and there's no emotional buildup to those scenes because we don't give a fuck about the characters. Excuse my language.
No, absolutely.
But I think this podcast is allowed poor language.
Well, let's not go over the top, but
right. But you're right. It felt like, for me, it felt like a Frankenstein of people. It felt like if all three of us wanted to remake, we wanted to make a movie together, and we're inspired by, Guy Ritchie films and Shaun of the Dead. This is what you get.
Yeah.
This is what you get. Amateurs making something, and they're just pulling from what they know and what they like. There's really no originality, and that kind of disappoints me. And the zombie kills, were spectacular either.
You don't even get like those gratuitous sort of zombies pulling people's guts out like you did in Shaun of the Dead. There's a couple of bits like that.
There are some moments.
A couple of bits, but none that are like as awesome and brilliant. Like, it's impossible not to keep drawing comparisons to Shaun of the Dead, but like the scene where the guy, Dylan Moran's character in Shaun of the Dead, the guy that's a bit of a dick and he gets like his guts torn out by all the zombies, is incredible effects and looks amazing. You think that film's 10 years older than this. But it's the plot as well. Like afterwards, maybe Andy will disagree here because he's saying it's mindless entertainment, but there was no reason why the zombie breakout had happened, and I was also incredibly frustrated with the ending. Like no explanation, it just ended. There was no
that didn't bother me.
It
obviously.
just started and it just ended. That's all it was.
Well, isn't that what you want from a film like that? I'm not saying that the film was good, but what I mean is this is my argument, right? At the beginning, in the scene with the cave, where the construction workers go in, and that guy says, oh, it's the wind. It's kind of letting you know that this film's going to be a bit silly. Because it was an obvious, it's a cliched word, isn't it? Oh, it's just the wind, don't worry about it. It's kind of a bit of a piss take. So straight away it's saying, listen, don't overthink this movie. It's not an established franchise where you need to know everybody's backstory. Clever what I did there, wasn't it? So don't bother. So in other words, you don't need an explanation. This is my take. You guys obviously disagree. I'm not interested in how the zombie plague started.
But if you're going to make
so what are you interested in then?
I wasn't interested in anything.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Like, even if you're
shit.
Well, then
I don't know what to say. Then fuck, you win.
You're defending the movie, but then you're saying it's shit though. And the trouble for me is, if you're gonna make a stupid or a silly movie, then go balls out for it. Like I know,
go straight. If you're gonna go retard, you always go full retard. Excuse my way.
Yeah, no, it's like, for example, I know a lot of people really disliked it. It's another film with Rasmus Hardiker in it, but Your Highness, I found incredibly funny because it was so over the top stupid. And yet this film, it couldn't decide whether it wanted to be sort of a silly film or if it wanted to it tried to develop these plots.
I don't agree with you.
No?
No, because
you
I
don't
think...
agree with that?
No, hear me out. It might sound like I'm sort of contradicting myself, and let me explain. I think the tone, they got the tone pretty much spot on, in my opinion. It was, like I said, it told you straight away the type of movie it was going to be. That was a deliberate scene. It was predictable. It was cliched. It was over-the-top violence. It was telling you it's going to be a fun ride. Don't take it seriously. Don't go for checking out the characters' backstories on Wikipedia. Just laugh, sit back, and relax and enjoy. But the problem was they didn't do that well enough.
No.
The first 20, 25,
They
Chris
tried
said,
to subvert our expectations.
Oh, the first 30 minutes, I was enjoying it. It was funny. I was interested to meet the new people. And then it just got boring. They ran out of jokes. You'd seen it all before. There wasn't enough substance to keep it going.
So you've disagreed
That's
with me
my
and
view.
then almost mirrored what I said.
Well, I think he was making a point for the beginning of the film.
Right, yeah.
Like, he's like, if it was going to be the payoff that they set up, like he's saying, then yes, we probably all would have enjoyed this movie. But I think we all can agree 25 minutes into this film, 30 minutes into this film, it loses its flavor.
Yeah, it seems exciting, and then you realise sort of it becomes an incredibly shallow movie, and it's not even a particularly fun ride to go on. And this for me is the trouble. The comedy wasn't funny enough, and the action wasn't good enough. So there's not much left for the movie, except if they had expanded on the plot, it might have been a bit more interesting. If there had been I know you've said that the plot was already fairly convoluted, Chris, but if there had been, some kind of explanation, how did these zombies get there, or what happened, and even at the end, because it just ends, and they don't say, oh, okay, the military came in and sorted it out, or, they found a cure, or anything like that. It is a movie that's supposedly about pure action and comedy, and I can see that's what they wanted to do, but they failed on both counts.
But can I ask you though, Adam, right? If it had been funnier and the jokes would have been non-stop throughout the whole half an hour and it kept you laughing, you wouldn't have been asked about not having a backstory about this engineered zombie virus.
No, exactly. I'm looking for. You're absolutely right in that regard, and that's why I said something like Your Highness, which is really low-rated movie, but for me it was just silly and funny the whole way through. Whereas this, it kind of tried to tread a line between comedy, drama, action, and it didn't give us any of that really.
Maybe I was kind of, when I said I disagree with you, what I was trying to say is I thought the tone, if you understand what I'm saying, was okay, was well done, but there wasn't enough. The tone was good, but there wasn't enough jokes. It wasn't funny enough, and they didn't. Well, that's basically it. It's a comedy movie, and it wasn't funny enough. 30 minutes in, the jokes had dried up.
Yeah, that
was the problem for me. Like I said, you just agreed with me that if the comedy had kept going through the whole hour and a half, you wouldn't have been asked about not having a backstory and about one-dimensional characters.
But
that's what I'm saying. That's, in my opinion, that's where it went wrong.
You could tell that the comedy was going to be weak, I think, even from the first few minutes. Because when the two construction men in the opening scene go in the thing, and he goes, oh, it stinks down here. And the other guy goes, oh, it does now. And he's like, oh, Butters. I don't think his name was Butters, but something like that. And I just thought, well, that's a very weak joke to put in the first 5 minutes of your movie.
I wrote down some of the jokes that I enjoyed.
Well, I'd be curious to hear them.
Yeah. Let's go over some positives.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was one bit at the beginning where the guy mispronounced skeletons. Now, I didn't know whether that was like a deliberate thing or whether the scriptwriter's just a fucking idiot.
No,
Skellingtons.
Skellingtons it's a very London way of saying skeletons. Skeletons, sorry. But yes, Skellingtons. It's quite a popular way of producing it. Pronouncing it.
I thought he was talking normal. I didn't know that was a joke.
They did the flashback. They did the flashback to the guy holding up the shop, and he ended up like with his shotgun, and he's like trying to chat the bird up because there's an attractive girl working at the shop, and then he forgets what he's doing, and then the girl grabs hold of the gun and twats him. I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah, well, actually, and that character was is his name Jack Doolan, the guy that plays him, and I thought he's a very good actor as well. He was also in the Ricky Gervais written Cemetery Junction. And again, another actor who was quite underused. I think he had his character was quite, because he sort of was this bumbling guy that thought he had a reputation as a bank robber, but just had a reputation as an idiot. He was another character that could have had more. But like I said, the two characters that really interest me were both killed off very early in the movie, and then we're just kind of left with these people that we don't really care much for. For me, apart from the baby punt, my favourite bit was Richard Bryars on his Zimmer frame getting chased by the zombies and just going, oh, zombie, zombie. And that I enjoyed. But then Richard Bryars, of course, any English viewers, and maybe Andy, you'll remember this, was in The Good Life, which was a fantastic series from the 70s. And so this guy's been acting for 60 years. I mean, again, someone else who was quite, I would say, underused in the film, who probably the most experienced comedic actor in the cast there, and he got like one decent scene to be funny.
Yeah, I mean,
it was also funny when the old man thought they were vampires. That was kind of funny.
Oh, okay.
But can't you see they're vampires?
I did like the guy with his really convoluted Cockney rhyming slang was quite good as well. When it goes, oh, there's a bunch of Trafalgars out there, and they're like, Trafalgars? Yeah, and then he starts trying to, like, Trafalgar Square, Care Bear, and like goes through this list till eventually gets to Abercrombie and Fitch, zombie.
I also found a bit funny where they've got to put the costumes on because they're robbing the bank, and the nuts guy, Mental Mickey, takes off his fake moustache. He already had like a beard. Takes off his fake moustache over his beard. It's like, well, what did you even bother putting that on for?
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite funny.
Funny scenes, and I really think that, this was just, maybe it was poorly executed. Like, there's sprinkles of talent and some really funny stuff that goes on and some really cool things, but I just think that maybe the production side was just poorly executed.
Yeah,
it could have been
sorry, Chris. I'm trying to rattle off the funny bits where he's like, what I thought was funny, where the police turn up when they're holding up the bank, and the guy goes, listen, can't we just say we made a mistake, no hard feelings? Yeah, like that. Oh, that's like some. Oh, never mind. That's off topic, isn't it? Yeah, but that's kind of something some idiot would say, isn't it?
Yes.
That we all know.
Well, yeah, I'm not.
I didn't even do it.
But it is strange that it started out quite strong, and then it's like whoever wrote it kind of gave up and just
got pissed.
Yeah, or just kind of got bored with writing their own movie and went, oh, the second half will just finish with
zombies.
zombies.
Like one of your projects.
Yeah, it is.
Finish it.
Starts off strong, and then yeah. So
yeah,
it's.
Yeah, I don't think
nothing happens. I like it. Put it down. What color? Blue. I like blue.
Yeah, but yeah, the script it got very weak, and if like I said, if the action had been better, that might have held things up towards the end. But and I know, Andy, you'll probably have an issue with this, but sort of continuity wise and this sort of thing, these people are all based in England. Guns are not a natural thing. Suddenly they all pick guns up and they're all a bloody crack shot with them. It's like this. The only one incident is someone didn't know how to take the safety catch off a gun once.
Why would I have an issue with that?
Well, because you're saying just take it, as a laugh rather than look for plot holes.
To be fair, that's because movie.
Yeah.
Because movie, they could shoot like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't. That was the least of my problems with the film.
Oh well,
they could use guns. That's bullshit.
I'm surprised that in a movie where you've got zombies running around and that you're criticising their ability to use a gun.
Now you're taking it too far.
No, I'm saying their ability to use the gun was too good.
Stop taking this zombie Cockneys movie too seriously, Adam.
I thought it was vampires.
Well, again, another bit I thought was the end scene with the granddad who was about to sacrifice himself, and he's like, "Oh no, the chain for to fill the people in the audience in." One of the last scenes. They're trying to escape on a boat, and the granddad spots the chain is tied to the thing, so the boat can't leave the dock. So he goes, "Hang on, you look after everyone," and jumps over to untie the chain, and he's standing there with a massive machine gun. Like, why couldn't he just shoot the chain?
Not with that caliber.
That.
I don't think that would have really worked realistically.
No, I don't know much about guns and chains.
In the movie, it could have worked, but it's not. They thought we cared about the grandpa, so when they're like molesting him, and watch the extras zombies in the background, guys. They're hilarious. Some of them look right into the camera. Some of them break character. It's hilarious. But anyway.
Oh, wow.
Wow, I didn't even notice that.
Well,
yeah, we're supposed to. I got bored and started trying to pick it apart, like frame by frame.
Well,
I got very bored as well. Did you not, Adam?
I did, yeah, but I was trying. I think because I was looking forward to this podcast, so I was trying to still pay attention, even as it was the movie, as hard as it could, was trying to lose my attention. Little fun fact, though, guys: the only reason I heard of this movie is because one of my friends was an extra in it. But they listed a lot of the zombies at the end, and his name wasn't on there, so I don't know if he was bullshitting me.
Well, it's not too hard to be an extra, so he's probably telling the truth. Why would you lie about that?
Yeah, but like if you
they don't name every fucking extra in the credits.
Okay, yeah, he might have been in it, but yeah, that's
not like a great trying to impress. Never guess what? I was an extra in Cockney versus Zombie. Beat that.
Right. Ask your friend if he has copy and credit. They should at least give him. Oh,
he's not in Actors Guild or anything. I think he just happened to be in the right place at the right time or something.
Well, I'm not discrediting him, but like I've been an extra in a lot of stuff that's not credited. It's just the way it
is. But yeah, that's the only reason I happened to hear about this movie, and for some reason it just popped into my mind the other day. It lost my attention towards the end, but I watched it right to the end because I was trying to look at it from a professional aspect. I even sat through the end credits to see if there was some kind of after scene, and that's why, because they listed a whole bunch of the people who acted as the zombies. That was something else as well. During the first sort of half an hour of the film, there was like 3 flashbacks that the one obviously with the, what was his name, Tuppence, and the girl and the gun, that was fun. The kind of the Nazi scene was just a bit odd, to be honest. Just like, I joined the war, and then it just cuts to him killing a bunch of Nazis.
Just killing a bunch of Nazis.
That was a bit weird.
I forged my signature at 15 so I could kill Nazis.
Yeah, and then they have why do they need to have a flashback to that? He can just say it. I don't think having a flashback added any impact to it. Again, I feel it a bit like the football zombie hooligan fight scene. It was more filler. They were like, this movie's running too short. What else can we stick in here? Oh, cool, Bricktop back to do a flashback scene.
This is a strange thing that we're doing, isn't it? We're reviewing, in a way, a movie because it's not bad enough. It's like, how do you actually approach that? It's a strange thing to do, isn't it? Because we're kind of pulling it apart bit by bit, which is fine, but with the reason for us doing this is to try and find a movie hilariously bad. But this doesn't kind of fit into any of those categories, does it?
I think the production values were too high.
Yeah.
I think the production values were too high. I think it had promise. Both Chris and I had watched the trailer and were quite excited. We were like, this might be too good for what we're looking for. And I think we're all in agreement that it is a bad movie.
It's not. Yeah,
it's not bad looking.
It's not. I'd say it's distinctly average at best. I wouldn't say it's bad.
Yeah,
it's below par.
Yeah.
It's not what I was hoping for, and I think partially as well. I think there's too much.
I saw the movie.
Partially as well, there's too much. There's too much emphasis on, like, because even the title itself, Cockneys versus Zombies, it's like, come and look at the Cockneys. They speak funny, don't they? I'm from London. Like, it's like.
Do you not think though, Adam, that with the title called Cockney versus Zombies, your criticisms about no backstory and one-dimensional characters is a little bit fucking silly?
I'm sorry, but if you are going,
a lot of the Cockneys, like, where's the origin of the Cockneys? Who was the first Cockney?
I'm not saying I want that much depth. Like, it starts out with the origin of Cockneys.
I'm going to write a backstory novel just for Adam. I'm going to write an entire novel just based on that female character to satisfy Adam's whim.
No, I'm just saying, there could have been more depth. You can make a silly, fun movie that has more depth.
Don't be silly.
You absolutely can. It lacked in everything. It needed something to stand out. If the comedy doesn't, the action should have. The action didn't, so at least give the film some kind of credence.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. At the end of the day, though, a film like that is not going to have three-dimensional characters. But, like I said, it goes back to it just wasn't fucking funny enough, was it?
Well, in fact, to draw a comparison with The Room probably
It
tried
wasn't
more
stupid.
to give its characters depth, although failed, than this film did at all.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's one of the things we love about The Room, isn't it? Because it's like, well, yeah, I suppose.
I mean, the characters would try to have depth in The Room, but they kind of switched personalities in every other scene.
Well, they were being dead serious.
Yeah.
That's what's so funny. Like the whole "give me my money" with the whole Denny scene.
Oh, we're gonna start going into The Room, aren't we? We'll have to.
Well,
We'll have
the
to
fans
stop.
should know what our soundboard is, what our basing, what our what scientists would call our control. It's like The Room.
Well,
We're basing it against.
I think most
Why
people
we
have watched
do
The
that.
Room, and if you haven't, guys, you do need to see The Room to understand this series as it goes on. But yeah, any other major talking points? Do you guys want to do, before we move on to our ratings, and then we'll have a quick chat with the audience before we wrap things up. So any other major points that you wanted to make about the movie?
What is there to say about a movie like that?
Would if someone said to you, Andy, I just want to watch a movie that I don't have to think about, would you recommend this?
No.
Okay.
Because there's much better films that you don't have to think about, like Taken or something like that, if you just want a quick hour-and-a-half ride. Or
Right,
let's
go
just
watch
say you
Pearl
wanted...
Harbor.
Yeah, or let's just say, it's probably a wrong comparison that, but let's just say you wanted an hour-and-a-half of silly comedy. There's 1,000 other movies that I'd recommend rather than this.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. I think if someone said to me, I want a mindless comedy or a mindless action, there's a lot more I'd recommend before people watch this. I wouldn't recommend this to anyone, I don't think.
But if somebody was in the mood for a silly comedy movie, a silly comedy zombie movie, then
Wow.
Shaun of the Dead.
yeah, no, you're right. It's difficult to recommend it. So basically, anybody that's tuned in, don't watch it.
Right, so we're going to do two kinds of ratings at the end of each of these movie discussions, guys. So we're going to do both a rating of what you would give it out of 10 just on someone who's watching the movie purely, and then a rating out of 10 on how it compares or how it fits into our trying to find the next room. Have you both got your scores ready, gentlemen?
Yep.
Okay, well, Chris, if you want to go ahead with yours.
Okay, from here, this is right from my channel. From a fan of film, or from a film standpoint, just a movie, I give it a 2.
Okay.
And if I compare it to The Room, it's a 1.
Okay.
Out of 10.
And any
those are both out of
reasonings
10.
behind your ratings?
For The Room, it's not funny, but it's not undeliberately funny at the same time. The Room had a charm to it because it was bad because they were trying and they just were horrible filmmakers. This didn't have that. It was just a non-funny movie. So I don't think it, I think a 1 is just, it might not even really go on the list for me, but I'll put it as a 1 for that. But as a film fan and just someone who loves movies, this movie's just awful. It's bad and it's all over the place, and the tones, I keep saying it's like Snatch meets Shaun of the Dead. But that's not even a fair comparison because those movies are good. This movie sucks. So it's like a poor man's version of somebody attempting that. If I was going to drop it on my channel, I'd give it a 2. So that's right.
Well, the tagline is, isn't it? Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels meets Shaun of the Dead. Which I
lying sacks of shit.
Yeah, it didn't really live up to that.
They tried, though. You can see how they really tried. It was like my daughter when she tries to grab a spoon. It's really cute. She can't quite get it, and her hands just like all over the place. It's like that.
Yeah, Andy, your ratings?
Out of you rating out of 5, Chris?
10.
Out of 10.
Sorry, bloody hell, that is a low score.
Mm-hmm.
I'd give it just out of 10 as a film. If I was, for what it's worth, I'd give it like a 4.
Okay.
3.5 if we're getting technical. As a comparison to The Room, I wouldn't even give it. I'd just give it a 0.
Okay.
Because it's like to compare that to the room is like an insult.
It's
You know
crazy
what I mean?
that you should say that, because I mean this was probably had a lot higher budget than The Room, although no one really knows what Tommy Wiseau's budget was. But it's very difficult to compare to The Room. Well, my ratings purely from a fan perspective, as the pleasure I got from this movie. Sadly, I'm rating it the highest out of all of you. I said 4 out of 10. The lack of any real character development, the weak and unexplained plot, making it...
No backstories for the characters.
No backstories.
We never got the original Cockney.
Yeah.
We don't know what he's
However,
skills explained. No montages of gun training.
How the fuck?
All right. All right. But with a couple of laugh out loud moments, and the performances of Ashley Thomas was the guy's name I was looking for, and Richard Briers saving it from being just an absolute piece of crap movie. So I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Room rating again. I've actually gone for 3 out of 10. My reasoning behind this.
What?
Well, I have a reasoning behind this. I don't just throw numbers around willy-nilly,
yes,
Andrew.
Your reasoning's flawed.
Well, you haven't heard my reasoning. How can you state it's flawed? How can you state it's flawed? This is from a man with a spiritual channel.
I don't have a spiritual channel. Stop lying.
Right. The reason I gave it a 3 out of 10 on Room rating was due to the weak plot and an unsatisfying conclusion. It actually probably had more in common with The Room than I anticipated after seeing the trailer. So for me, it's got a 3 out of 10 Room rating. So overall...
Wait. Explain yourself again.
Yeah, right. I didn't quite get that.
Right, the plot is not well thought out, very much like The Room.
Yeah.
It's a very unsatisfying movie with no real conclusion. I suppose The Room had a very weird conclusion, but you could draw a similarity there as well. Therefore, I think this was closer to what we were looking for than we expected, but are still very far apart. But mostly the main reason that is probably due to the production and professionalism, how it looked. If it had been on a much lower budget, it could well have been a good contender for a Room comparative movie. So 3 out of 10 on Room rating.
Right, I don't know how I feel. Your logic, Adam. I think you should be executed for that comparison.
Right. Well, anyway, we will now take questions from the floor. So, if anyone in the chat wants to say anything or ask us any questions in regards to the movie, then please do throw out there now. We'll have a look at the chat, and a little chat amongst ourselves before we wrap things up for the evening.
Common Time says he wants to hear a review of a movie that I love and Adam hates. That would be quite fun.
Well, you see, the other way round, I could suggest quite a few.
Cut me out of it, why don't you?
Sorry, Chris.
You could be the referee, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. I could be the referee. Hey now, gentlemen.
But there's been a couple of movies that... what was the... The Ritual. Andy hated it, and I loved it.
Shit that was.
Yeah, but then Andy thought, well, no, what we could talk about that. What was it called?
Caliber.
Caliber, yeah, because I wouldn't say I hated it, but it was shit.
I really enjoyed it. It was one of the best movies I've seen in ages.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Again,
hang on a fucking minute. Hang on, I'm not going to let this drop now. You're whinging.
Well, then
you're whinging. Adam's whinging that there's no explanation for the fucking zombies, right? In this movie. A movie entitled Cockneys vs. Zombies, right? The Ritual is supposed to be a serious movie, and there's a giant monster running around in the woods for no reason, with no explanation other than to slaughter people. And you thought that was good.
You've literally boiled it down to the simplest thing it could be. And the problem I have with Caliber is that, again, the characters are underdeveloped, and it was...
No, we're not talking about Caliber.
Right, The Ritual... you've just boiled it down to the simplest thing it can be. There was a lot of cool psychological stuff that led up to the monster. Maybe the monster itself was a bit over the top, but other than that, I thought it's a fantastic...
That's what the movie's about, though.
No, it's not. Oh, you take everything at face value, Andy.
The movie's not about the monster. It's about
It's about the people
characters going through that emotional journey.
It's
I know what you're saying, but the whole point.
A catalyst.
I get what you're saying, but the whole point, the whole story is based around that monster.
no, it's not.
Well, if the monster wasn't there,
Yeah.
right, it'd be a completely different movie, wouldn't it? Because the whole point is they're being terrorized by this monster who slaughters them.
Well, no, because the build up to that, the build up to that, you don't see them all. Have you seen The Ritual, Chris?
No, but I know what you're arguing. I can understand.
The build up to that, you don't actually see the monster. You see people after they've been like mauled by the monster. You know, like brief glimpses. The monster is not a big part of that movie. It's all about it had, like, for me, I don't know if you've seen The Village. It reminded me a bit of that, which I enjoyed until the obvious ending. But it
me too. Dang.
Yeah. And it's it drew a lot of similarities with The Village. When you find out about the monster and the situation and the people behind it, it becomes a whole lot more interesting. And the fact that the monster had these kind of psychological powers to draw these guys' worst memories out, I thought was brilliant, because they're all dealing with shitty things they've done in their past. Isn't that what makes a good psychological horror? It's not people. Well, it's not what's happening in the present. It's people trying to hide from the things they've done bad in the past that makes it.
Of course, I totally get you. I suppose the way that we're looking at it a bit differently, right? If the movie is about this, it's not about the monster, I get that, but you've got to agree that that's a pivotal point of the movie. Well, not pivotal, but it's a massive part of the movie. This is what drives them to these terrors. I can't buy into the movie because it's just nonsense. Whereas if you've got like a psychological thriller like Silence of the Lambs, there's no supernatural element to it, so you don't need an explanation. But yet you're quite happy to watch Zombies versus whatever, Cockneys, and whinge that there's no explanation as to what the zombies are doing there.
But Cockneys versus Zombies could have redeemed itself by being better in other places, because it failed in so many different things. But The Ritual is a great movie. For me, it wasn't. Even when I think back to it, I don't think about the monster at the end. It needed some sort of big bad. If you ever watched Buffy when you were younger, like it needs a build up and something to face at the end, or it wouldn't have it. But for me, it was about the main character, Rafe Spall's character, and dealing with that guilt of when he didn't try and help out his mate, which, I mean, that's a brilliant thing, because that will play on your mind for the rest of your life. Your mate's involved in it, gets himself in the wrong situation in an armed robbery, and you're hidden. Do you go out and risk your life, or do you stay there? Many, many people under pressure would just stay there, which he did. And, of course, forever he's going to feel guilt. He's going to put that on himself. And that was what it was about. It was about the psychology of this character trying to deal with the guilt of what he had done. And that's why, like, at the end, like, it turned out that all his friends, even that they had done things that were probably worse, and that's why he kind of survived, because although he had done this thing that he felt was shitty, he did something that many other people would have done in the same situation. And I'm sorry, but Andy, Rafe Spall does never put his name to something that isn't good. Now, those two actors in Calibre, honest, have you, well, with the exception of The Ritual, have you ever seen Rafe Spall in something bad?
I can't think off the top of my head.
Right, but he's been in Black Mirror. He was in Kid Adulthood. These are all. He's Timothy Spall's son, and he's one of the best actors at the moment around.
What's that got to do with the movie being good or bad? Some of the greatest actors in the world's ever seen have appeared in poor movies.
Well, true, but that's when they've done loads. Rafe Spall, I have never seen be bad or give a bad performance in anything.
It just highlights I think it's a good way to highlight what people like, look for different things in movies. You're quite happy to have that monster running around with no explanation, a little bit like Cloverfield.
Well, there is an explanation.
But it pisses me off. I can't enjoy a movie like that if there's a monster and there's no reason for it to be there. But a bit like The Quiet Ones. That wound me up a little bit.
I've not seen that.
Is it The Quiet Ones? You know what I'm talking about, Chris? Rocker's just mentioned it in the chat.
What? Sorry?
Quiet Place.
Quiet Place.
That was fucking brilliant.
I love that.
Yeah.
No, I did. No, hear me out. Listen, I enjoyed the film. It's a really good movie, but there's one niggling thing was that the monsters being there. There was like no reason for them to be there. Like, where's the explanation about how these animals have evolved that can only hunt by hearing, and why have they taken over the earth? It was a bit too far-fetched.
There's some sprinklings in that film that show you that the dad was trying to figure that same thing out. Like, he was part of the audience. He was. If you go back and watch the movie, I've seen it a couple of times. There's news clippings. There's news reports on in the background. There's him trying to figure stuff out.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not highlighting it as a massive criticism because it's a great film. It just gnawed at me a little bit. That's all.
Yeah, no, I see why that would. It doesn't bother me, but it used to until, honestly, not to brag, but until I started getting into the film industry and stuff like that, and understanding storytelling, and I had somebody kind of guide me through a movie one time and try to see it at the side of it. So I can understand that, like, building a story around something like that, I can understand how that works, and I don't see it as such a bump in the road for me as a filmmaker and a fan of film. I actually kind of like it now more than that.
See, that movie is so good. I didn't even, while watching it, I didn't need to think about it. I just thought, well, it's in the future. Something's happened. Something's evolved. So no need to worry about it. Just enjoy the movie.
It didn't spoil the enjoyment of it to any major degree.
No. But then coming back to what you're saying about having this monster in the ritual, Andy, I mean, so would you not watch Predator?
Well, yeah, but that's different because it's an alien, and you can totally buy into the fact that this alien, like, has evolved on another planet.
The opening scene is the alien.
Okay, all right. Let me try and think of something else with a monster in it then.
Cloverfield, because that movie's ridiculous.
I haven't seen that for years.
Don't bother with shit.
Yeah.
I can't remember it, to be completely honest.
But it highlights what we're talking about. That's a film that the Earth's basically being rampaged by the biggest monster you've ever seen, and there's no explanation at any point during the film what it's doing on Earth, where it came from. It was just weird.
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah,
it's just about like what we said, Adam. Like, it doesn't mean that you're right or I'm
no.
Right. We just look for different things. Like, I just find it very strange that it bothered you a little bit that there was no explanation. Is it about the zombies? Is it because you're a Walking Dead fan and you're into the zombie genre?
Well, I do love everything with zombies in it, to be honest. And I think, they could have had some stupid. For me, it was just odd that they just came out of nowhere. Like,
so
these.
You'd sooner have had a stupid explanation that didn't make any sense than just not bother mentioning it.
Well, I think it's weak writing, and do you know why I think they did it? I think they did it because they didn't. It's too easy to say a virus has taken over. Every zombie film does that. Some virus eats someone's brain.
So if you were to write that movie, well, you wouldn't have done, but let's just say that you could change that one aspect of that movie, Adam. What would you have done to sort of rectify that error?
Well, I would need some time to think about how I could explain the existence of zombies without using the time-old virus thing. But I'm sure there's a way you could have been original about it. It's just that they open this tomb that's been there for years, and suddenly there's 2 zombies in there, and that's all. How long have they been there? There's no explanation given to it. Zombies have always been there, but no one's known until these 2 construction workers go down into a tomb. Like, I know, of course, it sets up the main premise for the movie, but give us some kind of an explanation. Just some kind of backstory or depth to anything. And like I say, I can take a movie with no depth, but then there has to be something, comedy or action, to make up for that. And Cockneys vs. Zombies just doesn't have any of that. So, yeah, how would I... Not a virus then, I don't know, zombies, a rabid dog bites someone. Something like that.
Right, so a rabid dog bites someone would have appeased Adam's criticism that there's no backstory about the virus.
It's better than 2 zombies suddenly coming out of nowhere. It's better than 2 zombies coming out of nowhere.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. And then at the end you could have had a scene where they find out that the dog had sex with a monkey and that's how it had got zombie AIDS.
I really want to see your fucking zombie movie.
Well, there you go. It'll be better than Cockneys versus Zombies.
This is great.
Yeah. So.
Zombie AIDS.
Yeah, the zombie AIDS. So.
Can we just, do you mind? I want to just talk about it because I think it's important if we're going to do this series looking for the new room. This is your gig, Adam. I don't want to.
No, go for it.
About why we find. I know we've touched upon it before, but we've not gone into much depth about why we find The Room so endearing as a film. Why is such a bad movie such a good movie, and why that one specifically? Is it because Chris can give his insight on it, being into films. I think part of it, just for what it's worth at the minute, is because Tommy's kind of an endearing person. Him like Tommy Wiseau, there's something quite endearing about him. He's kind of a lovable sort of weirdo in a way.
Well, you've read the book, haven't you, Andy? The Disaster
No,
Eyes.
I've not finished it. I'm only halfway through.
Okay, I'm not sure if, hopefully it's not too much of a spoiler for you, but there's a part in the book where they talk about he goes to one casting agent and they say, you can go for roles like Frankenstein or some kind of monster, but you're never going to be a leading man. And
it's in the film.
Oh, is it? Oh, in the Disaster Artist film, not The Room, yeah.
Not the Room.
And I think that, it's very difficult having read the book and knowing the kind of person Tommy Wiseau is to agree with you that he's an endearing person, an interesting person certainly, but not a particularly endearing person. I think sometimes his relationship with Greg Sestero was kind of sweet at times, but he also was an absolute dick to Greg Sestero.
He was jealous of Greg.
Yeah, well, Greg was this, sort of James Dean looking babyface guy, wasn't he? He wanted to look like Greg didn't and it's
baby face.
Exactly.
But do you not think that, I know what you're saying, he did appear a bit of a dick in the book, but in the movie, let's just say his character is quite likeable, isn't it, Tommy?
No, absolutely not. No, his character.
Do you not agree, Chris?
You talking about his character in the film?
Yeah, his character.
Did I like his character?
His character's likeable.
I don't know who the fuck that guy is. Like, how the fuck can I build a character around? Stop touching me, motherfucker. I don't know what the.
Nobody always tries to do the right thing, doesn't he? You know what I mean?
No, he says he does, but we never see him doing shit. So I don't, as a fan of film and a screenwriter and all that shit, like, no, I don't know that character, so I don't feel anything for him. I don't know how. That's a movie void of feeling. It's in a whole nother spectrum. It like broke the universe. But I can feel for Tommy though, because he put this dude was like, I'm gonna make a movie. I'm just gonna go for it, man. I live that every project.
Yeah.
So I can get behind his steadfastness and his passion to try to make a story, and maybe not being as talented as you think you are, I can kind of get with that a little bit, and I can kind of appreciate where he's going with it. I don't understand the jealousy part with another boy, but that's okay. So as a filmmaker, I do kind of feel for Tommy, and he's cool. Like I go on YouTube, I watch interviews with him all the time. I just think he and his background, nobody really knows where he's from, and all the secretness around him just makes the room that much.
It makes him a very enigmatic figure.
Maybe he isn't likable then.
In the book he does a lot of dickish things to Greg, but he also does some great things for Greg as well, and he is kind of supportive of him. And however, I think the character he plays in The Room that script was written by, it could have been written by a 14-year-old boy, probably better. And the final scene in The Room is exactly that. It's a 14-year-old boy imagining everyone crying over his body after he kills himself. It's the most vain vanity project ever, and that's part of its brilliance because it was hugely about. He tried his character. You say he tries to do the right thing, Andy, but the only kind of outstanding things I remember him doing is recording with a shitty tape recorder, trying to record his girlfriend, and
Oh Jesus! I fucking love that scene.
yeah, when he
So much. There's just so much wrong with it. It's like, I'll show them. I'll always be here.
yeah, and then just plugs in this cassette recorder to the phone that just magically plugs into it.
I hear everything, Greg. I hear everything.
Yeah.
What was the point of him trying to tap that phone? It didn't make any sense.
He'd already heard the information he needed.
He already knew what was going on.
I have evidence, and everybody betrayed me.
Yeah. The thing is, that film is probably the deepest we'll ever get into Tommy Wiseau's head, and it's a bit like he is.
Oh God.
He is kind of a guy
He's
that.
been hurt somewhere, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Nobody heard this poor man. Like, damn.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Change their minds all the time.
But like the end for him was, I think it was almost a cathartic thing. Like the ending of the movie was probably how he wanted the girl that broke his heart, or the guy that broke his heart previously, to feel, because at the end.
The guy.
Well, you never know, because he was kind of, in the book. Have you read the book, Chris?
Just excerpts of it. I haven't read the whole thing.
In the book, he's kind of a creepy guy towards Greg at some points.
But that's also one-sided.
Well, yes, yeah. I'm just saying. I was just trying.
Greg kind of strikes me as a homophobe.
Maybe, but then most people who are homophobic tend to hold deep, repressed homosexual desires, don't they?
Nevertheless, they're still homophobic, but I don't.
Well, okay. I was just trying not to be assumptive. Let's not pick apart me saying a girl or a guy. But the end scene was him. Was kind of, I believe, a cathartic thing for him. Like, he wanted his ex-girlfriend to see it and be like, "This is how you should have felt when you left me," or whatever. When like Lisa's like, "Oh well, I can still be with you, Mark," and he's like, "No, you can't, you bitch." And Denny's just there going, "Oh my God, he was so amazing." And I think that, that's him. It's like, there's an old story, I don't know if you guys heard about it. I'm not sure if it's kind of one of those urban legends or not, but about a Chinese man was so curious to see how people behaved how people felt at his funeral, that he faked his own death and held his own funeral. And everyone arrived, his wife, no one knew, everyone thought he was dead, and they're all crying and really sad, and then he jumped out of the coffin halfway through and went, "Oh, I was just trying to see what your reaction was, and that's great." And of course, when his real funeral came round after that, no one turned up. Anyway, but yeah, I think it might be an urban.
Where are you going with that?
I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting story.
What? Do they think Tommy Wiseau was going to pop up at the end like,
yeah, Tommy Wiseau.
everybody love each other?
But I think
You're doing a good impression of him, Chris.
I've been doing it for years.
The thing about The Room is just how weird it is. The first time I watched it, I got to the first sex scene and I went, "What the hell is this?" Turned it off. And then everyone was banging on about it, and I was like, right, I gotta watch it. And I was like, this inherent weirdness throughout it. The bit where he like humps her red dress. It's like, what is going on?
Straight away when Denny walks in, he just walks in without even like knocking, and then there's really weird camera close-ups of Lisa that make no sense, and then he follows them up. What's that weird sexual triangle that goes on between them? It's fucking bizarre.
Oh, yeah, because of course later on, Denny goes, "I'm in love with Lisa," and then he goes, "Yeah." That is, I suppose, what you're saying, Andy, about him trying to come off as a good person, because you go, "Well, don't worry, Denny, I don't mind you're in love with my girlfriend. Lisa love you too," but not in the same way.
Even funnier
She loves you as a human being.
Yeah, a human being.
But he says like, "I'm in love with Lisa," and then he goes, "Go on."
Yeah.
Isn't that enough?
Well, they had to ADR all of his lines, so they had to go in and re-record and dub over existing lines. So
that's right.
A lot of shit is off because Tommy can't act. So when he's dubbing his lines, it's like he's just reading it, like for fucking real. I could just picture him there, like with his glasses on and like 2 inches away from his paper. He's like, "Oh, hi, doggy. I'm a favorite customer. Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, he's just reading it. He's just fucking reading it. There's no acting going on at all in this movie, except from everybody else who doesn't know that they're in it for a shitstorm. Like, these poor actors at the time had no idea what they were getting themselves involved with.
Exactly. It's just such a mess that it's brilliant. I mean, I think we're trying to find these movies, and I think more of this is going to be about the journey, because we'll get to watch some shit movies. Andy and I will probably disagree on a lot of things throughout the course of this series. Although,
well, it makes it fun, doesn't it?
Yeah. But I don't think we'll ever find anything that is such a beautiful mess as The Room is, because it's...
No, I agree.
It was intended to be serious. I mean, we know because we're all familiar with the backstory that Tommy Wiseau wanted this to be the next Streetcar Named Desire. He was a big fan of Tennessee Williams, and yet it just...
The Tennessee Williams.
The Tennessee Williams.
Yeah. The Tennessee Williams.
And it was meant to be like the next amazing drama with all these twists and things. And
dude, I can feel that passion, man. Every time I go into a project, I'm just like Tommy. I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever done. Oh, it's so cool. I like it. You like my script? It's bomb. But it's not.
No.
But I feel for it. That's why I like it. That's one of the reasons why I like it so much. Because I'm like a butt hair away from being Tommy Wiseau. I swear to God.
Do you know what's funny when we was talking about Cockneys versus, you said, Adam, you know, if you wanted a quick hour and a half romp for a bit of fun, would you recommend it?
Yeah.
And The Room is the reason why I wouldn't, because it brings so much joy to anybody that watches it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's just an hour and a half of pure entertainment, and it's so funny, and but it's just a joy to behold.
It's accidental comedy, and that's the thing. You know, both you and I are huge fans of The Office. I know we always end up talking about it, which was mockumentary. Which I was thinking about this yesterday, oddly, and in a way, the mockumentary comedy is probably the easiest to write for, because you want people to look at it as if it's a documentary, and then it's just. Then it's almost like the funny bits are accidental. Although it's scripted, that's what they're doing. But so The Room...
You're like, you're catching it in the act.
Yes, yeah. It's like especially with The Office, why The Office was so groundbreaking, because it was filmed like you were a fly on the wall watching this office full of and the thing why The Office resonated so deeply with me is I've worked in offices. I've known characters like Gareth, like Tim.
Like the IT nerd and stuff like that.
I've known people like that. You know, I've got mates that like the IT guy that will try and one-up you on everything you say. I mean, that IT guy was in one scene.
Yeah, we all know people like that in our daily life.
And that's why the IT guy was in one scene in The Office, yet we all remember it because it was such a character that everyone has met someone like that in their life. And The Room is almost like being a fly on the wall of someone trying really hard to do their best and completely failing. But at the same time, absolutely managing to make something that is hilarious. But we are, at the root of it, we're laughing at someone else's failure.
But why, though? There's been lots of movies in the past that have been so dreadful. Why is this one a good bad movie?
It's the weirdness. Because
everything surrounding it.
He's trying hard.
It itself.
It's like he tries to give these characters depth, but instead of giving them depth, they change personalities every other scene. And so, you know, like one moment Lisa's really in love with Johnny, the next she wants to leave him and he's horrible, and then she makes up a lie about hitting her.
And then I'm dying of cancer.
Yeah. And then, I mean, that bit. Obviously, again, this is why perhaps you could even say it does hold some similarities to Cockneys versus Zombies, because that cancer line, I'm sure when Tommy wrote that, he intended to go further with it.
It's a twist. It's a twist.
Yeah, it's a twist. He intended, and he probably just forgot about it. He got into right in the end and just went, "Oh, I won't bother revisiting that." And it's another example. I mean,
because he doesn't know how to write he doesn't know how to. He's not a screenwriter.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, the thing with The Room is
come back to his twist, or it doesn't fucking work.
The script is weak from start to finish with The Room, but like he tries to add in these plot twists that then are never revised again. But that's what makes it so weirdly wonderful. And to be complete, if it hadn't been for Tommy Wiseau and the amount of money he threw at this film, we would have never heard of it. It would have just been an awful movie. You know, the first showings of this, people walked out. The cinemas put no refunds up for the room because so many people were coming out and asking for their money back. You have to remember, it didn't get its cult status until a few years after it had been out, and the only reason people kept going to see it was because he was advertising for it all this time. They had a billboard up with it on for like 6 years. Like, he paid one cinema to keep running it. Sorry.
I got pictures of me standing near that billboard. I gotta find them.
Yeah, you need to send me that. I want to see that. But and the number to phone for showings of his movie on that billboard took you straight through to his apartment, which apparently you can still call to this very day. I don't know if you'd still get Tommy Wiseau if you called it, but apparently you can still call to this very day. And because
Could you imagine what that would be like?
I'd be amazing. I'd love to have a little chat with Tommy Wiseau.
Isn't it his warped version of reality, though? Tommy Wiseau's warped version of reality that makes it funny. Because he wrote the script and he fell out with the script editor, didn't he, on numerous occasions, as one would expect.
Yeah. Well, I mean, according to the book, like, it would have been even more of a mess had Sandy, what's his name?
He wasn't a script editor; it was a script supervisor.
Yeah, if he hadn't been involved, it would have been even more of a mess. So
yeah, there's a podcast where he goes on someone's channel. I forget where it is, but you can watch it on YouTube. And Sandy talks about the entire thing, and he talks about everything that he directed and everything he didn't, which was one scene, was he refused to go back and shoot the sex scene the second time.
But Sandy left the set around halfway through filming again as well, which may be why something like the cancer thing was never revisited, because I think he was kind of pointing out potholes and things as much as he could to Tommy during the first sort of few weeks or few months of filming. I don't know how long it took them to film the thing in total. And then he was sacked later on, as most people were. The cast it was like a revolving door going in and out of that set. They were casting people when the film was months into production. Like the whole thing with the fucking the psychiatrist who suddenly starts being played by someone else later on.
Well, he got recast and went into another project, but yeah.
He got recast by someone else? Oh, sorry.
No,
I thought you meant in the movie, yeah, of course.
He had always had commitments to go and do another movie, and yet Tommy was not filming his scenes when he should have done it. Like Sandy apparently was saying to him, you need to get this stuff done because I think it was Peter was his name, wasn't it? Peter's only going to be with us for a few more days, and they never got round to it. So they ended up just changing the character completely.
And he also made all of the characters come to set every day of filming, just in case he felt like he needed to put them in the scene. So as an actor, I know how brutal and messed up that must have been, because that's grueling. It is, because if you're sitting around, you could be sitting around waiting for 12 hours, and they don't even need you. I mean, but your principal cast should not be on set every day.
No, absolutely not. But and then he was also telling people to get there early in the morning and not turning up till midday himself.
Yeah. So I mean, that part I think was, that's the inexperience. That's getting in over your head. That's not knowing how to shoot, how to plan. He didn't trust the team around him to do their jobs, and if he would have listened to Sandy, we wouldn't be talking about him right now.
No, you're right there. It's a perfect storm, isn't it? Haha, great story, Mark.
Right, haha, funny story.
But
you wrote this. This is pretty serious. He's like, well, people do strange things. Okay. Oh, okay. I guess okay.
That's a good answer.
People are strange these days. Well,
that's what he said.
Yeah. But there's no explanation given for it or anything, is it? And it's a perfect storm of just terrible writing, terrible production, really bad. It looks like it's on an incredibly low budget. I mean, it was 2003, which I suppose is a fairly long time ago now, but it looks like what's that famous soap opera you have in America, Chris?
Oh my God, name it.
Something and something it's called. Not Dallas, that finished years ago.
There's Young and the Restless.
Yeah, the Young and the Restless, or something like that. It looks like a really poor set.
It looks like softcore porn. It never ends. 2 a.m. on a low budget station. It's really, there's a weird, and they shot film and then they also shot HD at the same time, and then they cut scenes from the HD. They had the render from the film into HD. So then you got so many problems with the continuity with the visuals in this film. It's unbelievable. And the montages of Tommy walking. The B-roll is just classic.
Oh yeah, I mean that shot of San Francisco at the start, that looks like a poor soap opera from like the late 80s.
What about the crazy character motivations keep changing?
Yeah, well,
Lisa at that party just goes, "Oh, I'm pregnant."
Yeah,
Why did you say that for? Oh, just
to make things interesting.
What?
Oh.
What?
You're right. And then they get
She's
the fight.
trying to leave this guy. And why would she just start randomly kissing his best mate in front of him in the middle of the film?
Because she doesn't care anymore. Remember?
I know. It's just. Oh, I want to watch it again.
Yeah, I don't think you can get tired of it.
Always go back to the book.
Well, I think this has been quite a nice way to end, because if people do listen to this the whole way through in the future, then they'll get to hear why we enjoy The Room so much, and understand why we're doing this series. The cast of this series may change because people aren't always available. Like Andy has commitments sometimes, but we will be doing one of these each week. Whether it's Sundays or Mondays yet has not been fully decided. Obviously, it's nice to have Chris here because he knows a bit about movies, which is helpful. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this first sort of journey into the worst movies with us. We'll not, if anyone has suggestions for movies that we should watch, really bad movies that hopefully people haven't heard of, nothing too obvious, because we named a few, didn't we, when we were listing them, and sort of things like Troll and Troll 2 we thought maybe perhaps were a bit too obvious because everyone knows them as terrible movies. We want to find bargain bin movies that no one's ever heard of. So if any of you guys have suggestions in the chat, please do come back once the stream is updated and leave it in the comments, and we'll be sure to stick it on the list. And thanks for joining us in the chat. I've had a really good time. I hope you guys have had it as well.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I had a blast. But always fun talking movies, especially with you two knuckleheads.
Exactly. Guys, go and check out Chris's channel. Most of you probably know Andy's, but if you haven't, go and look at the stuff he does with paedophiles.
I don't do stuff with pedophiles.
What's this with you and doing stuff with pedophiles?
Well, everybody has their hobbies.
Exactly. You know, who am I to judge?
Check out newageandy.com.
Yeah. The links to their channels are both in the description, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, do go and check them out. Especially if you're into movies, then go and see Chris's channel. Thank you very much for joining me, gentlemen. And
Thank you.
I will say good night to everyone. So thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Do remember, if you haven't already hit the like button, do give it a little fingering for me. So take care, everyone. Bye.